Okay, the order will be solvency, legitimacy, democracy, politics, the court politics dissent, the critique. Everyone good? Yep. The legal precedent set by the affirmative overwhelms all causes because this model is spilled over to other countries. The plan does not cause backlash. They do not assume detention issues. All of their evidence is generic about deference. We have linked on this on the body set that says court affirmation of their independence solves legitimacy, and then there's also a difference between court legitimacy and U.S. legitimacy, which means their arguments don't take out the advantage. Obama will not circumvent our arguments against that he secretly wants to have the detention issues resolved and will use the courts as a way to have them resolved additionally, and indicates that there would be no way to circumvent a court ruling to release. Go to the legitimacy advantage. The status quo does not solve. There's no enforcement of Bumatini, which means the United States is not seen as a legitimate leader on legal issues. It's the only way to restore credibility to our hegemony, which ensures the stability of durability that solves wars from unipolarity. The alternative causes are relevant to legal norms, which set the United States legal jurisprudence. Our new evidence indicates that only court actions are relevant. Deference is not inevitable. They've conceded our evidence is dead now. The Zarevsky decision is the death knell of the political question doctrine. We also linked to this on the body set. Your evidence is generic. There's no impact to this. Go to democracy. People will only be able to model if rule of law. If the United States sets a strong precedent in the context of the war on terror, that there needs to be a check on political branches. Only the plan solves this, which is the only way to model democracies worldwide. That solves global war. Our evidence post-dates yours by 2 years, and it's the only one that draws the distinction between liberal democracies and illiberal democracies to create economic interdependence and shared norms and values that disincentivize wars. They do not need 90% of democracies. Global cooperation among democracies to create institutions that solve peace, that's their Fetweiss evidence. Only the United States can strengthen those institutions. War becomes less likely in the world of the affirmative, which means that even if every country does become democratic, that's irrelevant. We also solve Russia war by creating a system of relations on arms control issues that prevent accidents and relations overwhelm all causes like Georgia. Go to the politics debate. Case outweighs. We curtail all impacts through global hegemony, which de-escalates. You have read evidence that cyber attacks are inevitable, which your internal link doesn't solve because it's just about getting more computer tech scientists. If your hair trigger arguments are true, you don't change the U.S. nuclear posture, which means that if attacks are inevitable, your impact is inevitable. He never explains how the bill solves cyber attacks, and don't let Mimi do that work in the 2-hour. Go to the unique debate. Debt ceiling is sapped energy for a political agenda. It doesn't matter who was blamed for the debt ceiling. The fact is that Obama is unable to come back that and get the GOP to pass major legislation immediately after the government shutdown. The affirmative saves political capital. Our Simpson evidence was conceded from the other flow. The courts would take the blame, and that Obama would be able to shift the discussion onto the courts. The Cole evidence that they read on the dissent proves that the courts are seen as an independent institution that would be blamed. The argument about appointments is irrelevant, and it doesn't make sense because the appointments took place years earlier, and the Bumatini decision was authored by a justice appointed by Bush. Bumatini should have triggered all of their links about the blame. The plan is not a loss because Obama would still have credibility on other national security issues that has been calling for detention, so the plan be seen as a win. Bond is it. Their evidence proves that there will be a transition wars dissent to the alternative because collapsing with the neoliberal economic system and working towards another one does not happen peacefully. Sustainability questions are irrelevant. If neoliberalism is to collapse, the only question is who maintains a peaceful transition from that system, which is only possible in a world of democracy and liberal norms. Go to the critique. No impact events on the environment is irrelevant because our case massively outweighs the conceded time frame questions. Russia war happens in 30 minutes. The environment will take a long time to kill us. Additionally, the alternatives are worse for the environment. That'll be on the Richards debate, that framework debate. You only access this if your alternative is ethical. Constructing an ethical subject requires consideration of consequences because Mimi has conceded the consequentialism debate. So if we win that the alternative results in something bad, it is not an ethical advocacy. You do not construct an ethical subject. The self is never enough to change the world, which means that engagement in institutions is a valuable, productive practice, and their framework argument creates myopic focus on only making ourselves have the most ethically aware approach to the world, but never changing the material conditions for those that live in inequality. Our Margulis evidence provides the only way out. Even if micropolitics is good, our micropolitics of detailed legal issues create subjects that are able to effectively challenge the state on issues of detention by speaking the bureaucratic language of the state. Their framework argument provides no way for something like this to be solved because we merely moralize and criticize. The Young's evidence is on fire. It indicates that economic agendas are no longer tied to democracy promotion. Reading the only evidence after the recession, it's proven by things like the Doha Agreement, which was completely de-linked from the rule of law. All of their evidence on this is old and only speaking to history. This means two things. One, the alternative can never solve because there are other trade liberalization practices that are de-linked from democracy that they don't deal with. It also means the alternative will never solve case because it can't create the type of democracies we need to solve war. You should have said, they say the alternative leads to a new system of democracy. First, this would never solve Russia advantage, which requires a strong commitment to the rule of law, which they explicitly rejected. Also, obviously, the alternative would never solve hegemony. They reject U.S. Being the center of legal monopoly. Richard's evidence means that the alternative should not be considered unless there is a strong explanation of the type of social relations it creates for a new world. We need to compare ethical issues in the context of their alternatives. The alternative is a utopian world in which everyone listens to each other and models each other so that there is no inequality. That is not possible. We have read evidence that local democracies and bottom-up strategies are authoritarianism designed to trick us into thinking that they are working on their countries while in reality they are killing and detaining their own people. They say that prioritize structural violence. We solve structural violence. They've conceded the Chroma evidence indicates that there would be a more democracy and economic growth. Ultimate extinction outweighs because it's irreversible. They say Turner's case are no link arguments disprove, and we would still solve major wars even if the public backlashed. Holy shit. Whew. Yeah. Almost dropped some key arts.